Starting out on YouTube, catching up on TikTok. Do-do-do-do-do-do-do. Oh, good evening, everybody. Putting a quick thing on YouTube there. Welcome in, Tony Masters. First one in tonight, Friday. Friday. It's just it's one of those weeks that where the week is just like snapped by. So here we are, Friday. What last time was Friday? No, it wasn't Friday the 13th. That was Valentine's Day, Friday the 14th. But still, it's Friday again. So here we go. So, whatever's on your mind, this is a discussion about atheism, a little bit about logic, um, counterapologetics, talk about science, and whatever is on your mind. Um, this evening, this is an optional question up top. Was thinking about the presuppositional statement that atheists can't ground their logic and how that is just profoundly untrue because it is a presupposition. It's actually a trick. It's a trick tactic that they're assuming that we need to ground our logic where we don't. Nobody does. Their side, the other side. It's a silly argument. So when you look at it that way, the whole question goes away. The thing is, logic works for everybody. You just have to use it correctly. And it's like doing math. 1 + 1 = 2. Something cannot be both itself and not itself at the same time. They're basic rules of logic, and if you just use those, it works the same for everybody. So there's not going to be a lesson in logic tonight, but because I'm not qualified, frankly, nor entirely that interested. I mean, we all do the best we can. The discussions we have here are largely colloquial, unless experts come into the room, and then I kind of let them go with their expertise typically. But you'll find out that I like to talk to people that aren't experts because I don't want the conversation to just be had um, by experts. So we're the rest of us that like to watch these other shows that do have experts. That's terrific, and I really appreciate their work. I mean, you look at somebody like Matt Dillahunty and Aaron Raw and the body of work that they've done, and now Deacon Justin, Justin, Deconstruction Justin is building is like a new generation. Force Velkai is between generations, right? In his generation. Um, uh, as our secular rarity. I mean, there's so many people that are doing it and have been doing such a great job. But I really enjoy the more conversational um, interactions between people. So with that, if you're on TikTok, please follow. If you're coming through here, if you would be so kind, trying to get our numbers up as always. You can request in if I don't see your request, because many times, it just pops up for like 2 seconds and then it's gone, and I can't even get to it. So if you're not getting a response and you want to get let in the room, just please put something in the comments like "Why aren't you letting me in the room?" or something like that, and those I'll almost always see, and I'll let you up unless there's some best reason not to. Um, uh, I think I'm gonna try to go for about half an hour here before I really let the room fill up. But we'll see. Um, I do want a little bit of that back and forth, and then we'll open it more up for conversation. As the show goes on, you'll see we sort of have a panel um, that just kind of gets interesting. It gets off on its own vibe. So I'd like to have a little bit of both within the 2 to 3 hours that we're here. If you haven't been here, we're on Monday, Wednesday, Friday every week, um, 7:30 p.m. Pacific time. We do this on TikTok and YouTube. YouTube is currently live also. And if you're on YouTube, send in your question versus through the chat, and I'll pull them from there. And likewise, I would request that those of you who follow on TikTok follow me on YouTube too. That helps there out over there too. Let's make sure the stream is going good. Looks like we're good. All right, so I'm gonna start by. I saw some questions go by, so I'm gonna start right on there till someone wants to come in. I see a lot of. No, it's Saturday. No, it's Friday. Seriously, I am not wrong about that. Where's my? I don't even have my phone on me. Anyways, yeah, claiming your ground logic doesn't make it so. Uh, the one of the thing about presuppositional apologetics is that there's two types of presuppositions that I've noticed that they do. One is the presupposing God, right? Which of course has no basis. It's like we all eh, we all should be starting at the point of not knowing something. And then you ask a question, is this thing true or not? And then you investigate and then you figure it out. You don't start with an answer. You don't start with, yes, unicorns exist. Now, what does that mean for society or something like that? So, so that's one type of thing. The other type is when they say you have to ground this or that. Typically, it's logic. Sometimes it's other things, and you can only ground it. The other thing was typical is morality. So the only way you can ground it is by God existing. Therefore, God exists, right? And you can see right away the limitations of that argument because it's just immediately circular. So those arguments can be thrown away. I mean, you might as well be coming up and telling me 1 plus 2 is 5. So just because you say so. Firekeeper asks, as you're an atheist, what do you believe the meaning of life means? I'm not sure what you mean by the word means, but let's just go with what the meaning of life is. The meaning in it's interesting in the dictionary. If you look up meaning and purpose, you get like they refer to each other, so it doesn't really answer the question. But I think you all kind of know what meaning and purpose are. The reason to be kind of a thing. And in truth, there is no inherent meaning to our existence. We are no more at our base level. We are no more meaningful than a hydrogen atom is meaningful. It exists. We are much more complex. So we have this um, emergent behavior of being conscious, of being aware. Once we've got big brains like we have in terms of evolution, gotten us to this point, we have awareness of abstract concepts like meaning and value and purpose. So we can think about those things and literally just decide those things for ourselves because nothing externally gives us meaning. And frankly, if somebody external to you claims to give you meaning and purpose, like a god or a religion or a Scientology leader or something like that, they are basically asking you to serve them and not to serve yourself. So we are here. Feel lucky. Hey, Bronx. Yes, I am having a good Friday night. Bronx LT on YouTube there. Um, I got some chocolate in my coffee tonight, so that always makes me happy. So that's the pleasure of it is that we get to decide, and if we don't like what we are doing in terms of not feeling our life is meaningful enough, we can get introspective. We can, if you're really stuck, you can read a self-help book or something. But honestly, my favorite thing to tell people is to, or advise people is to just, if you're really stuck for a while, is just make yourself crucial to some other entity, whether that be a person, help a family member, take care of their kids, help somebody with grocery shopping, find an older person who needs their assistance and help them with their lawn. Get yourself a pet. It's just that simple. Get yourself a pet. That helps with time management because you get a little routine going, and they care about you. You care about them. You've got a little bit of purpose and meaning in your life. So that's all it is. I mean, it's pretty amazing that in life we. Oops. Okay, we got a request in already. Let me just go ahead and grab that before it disappears on me. Hey, hey, welcome in.
How are you?
I see we're in Arabic here, so you're gonna have to tell me your name.
Yeah, you can just call me Jindu.
Jindu. Okay, welcome in.
Yeah.
How's your Friday going?
Just stuck at work, about to leave soon. Just sitting
Yeah.
in my car. Yep.
Oh, good for you. End of the week. Got the weekend off.
I wish. No, going right back to it tomorrow
Ah.
and the day after that.
Oh well. Such is life. What's on your mind tonight?
So yeah, have you ever come across Islam? And I just wanted to see, because you're an atheist, I wanted to see your conclusion on Islam and your perspective on Islam.
Yeah, I've read the Quran. I read the Bible and then I read the Quran immediately after. Still have not read the Hadith, so I'll get to that at some point. What questions did you want to ask about it, or you want me to continue from there?
Yeah. So you read it like cover to cover, most of it,
Yeah,
you would say.
yeah, all of it, sure.
Okay. And what made you disagree with it?
Well, some of the stuff I found very fanciful, and like the Bible, there are certain things that are make sense in terms of what people would have known at a time before, like medicine and things like that. Like I found
Right.
the description of a fetus as starting out as a blood clot as a naive um, uh, thing that somebody back in that time would have thought that that's possibly how it worked, things like that. um i i I thought it was a much more consistent book than the Bible because it doesn't have the multiple writers and the inconsistencies like the Bible does in terms of style and one minute God's being good and another minute he's being just this awful kind of cruel person and stuff like that. So I thought it was a more consistent book. So in that sense, it was I'm not sure if better is the right word, but I suppose we can use that better in some sense. I thought it was also a little more severe in terms of um, keeping the practice within the practitioners. Uh, Both in terms of getting new people into it and in terms of keeping people into it, right? Because if you become an apostate, obviously there's punishment involved that's much stronger than what the Bible says. In Christianity, you can pretty much just walk away.
Yeah, unharmed. You're right.
Yeah. So I
That's
yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, I would say that's a very honest perspective on it. You're right. I mean, unlike the Bible, right? The book first claims to be from God, unlike the Bible. Um, if you're gonna read a book, it has to say that this is the word of God, or at least it has to claim that. But as far as we know, that Bible doesn't. And
I think it does here and there, but again, it's inconsistent, right? Because even as it starts, it just starts going, right? It just starts talking. In the beginning, this was that, and I mean, it does mention God pretty quickly up front. Not, it doesn't have the very specific. Um, it's been a while since I've read the beginning of it, so forgive me. It doesn't have the very specific talk of this is the word of God. I mean, every surah starts with something like God is merciful and
Yeah.
You know,
So for
those
the
types of
Quran,
things.
yeah, the most merciful, the especially merciful. I
Yeah,
mean, it's verbatim the word of Allah, right?
yeah,
So So I have a specific question about morals, right? Because morals, asking, depending on who you ask, it can be subjective. People, something that one person considers bad, someone else might not, right?
sure.
So this of a divine guidance that helps shape our morals the right way. That's very objective, right? Someone can't come tomorrow and say, no, this is how it's supposed to be.
Actually,
Like,
not really, because if you know, there are many God concepts out there, and every one of them has some. Well, not all of them have a book, but generally there's some rules as to how to live and recommendations, whether it's a book or it's oral tellings and things like that. And each of those essentially is subjective in of itself, claiming to have the most important set. So to me, it seems like we have a collection between different religions of different subjective rule sets. Now, obviously, there's going to be a lot of overlap, you know, in terms of some very obvious things like thou shalt not unalive other people and things like that. Um,
but do you just for I don't know if you can hear me. The blue box isn't going off. Okay, there it is.
good, good, good.
So yeah. So okay. So when you look at the TV, right? If you're not watching Fox News, people who want you to have a certain mindset about what Islam actually represents, right? It's they have an ulterior motive, propaganda, call it whatever. Um, when we actually look at real Muslim
Can I
countries
ask you
like
to sort of stand still because your footsteps are making a lot of noise.
oh yeah, sorry.
That's okay.
So yeah, so the Islamic countries or Muslim countries like Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Dubai, if you look at those countries, it's probably one of the safest, one of the cleanest places, right? People are very respectful, very nice. It's not what the media usually portrays to the Western world, right? They usually
Well,
take the
we don't get much exposure, right? Because you don't see those places on the news very much.
yeah, they're not going to show that. There's
Yeah,
no way they're going to show that. Yeah.
yeah.
So
I
the
mean,
reason why
it's like storytelling. You know, it's without conflict, there's no drama. So they're
yeah.
just going to show you
Um
the conflict.
but the point that I was trying to get to is that these places are under Sharia law. These are Muslim laws, right? It just means law in Arabic, Sharia, so it's just saying like law twice. But Sharia law, um we see five things in these Muslim societies. First of all, the five societal poisons, sexual immorality, gambling, interest, um
Well,
drugs,
let's talk about
and then one more.
yeah. What is number five actually? Now that you even
I actually forgot what number five was.
okay, so let's
It's
take the first one, sexual immorality,
okay.
just to grab the first one out of the gate.
Yeah.
Now, what does the Quran say about essentially consenting adults being able to just do what they want to do? Why does it have such a strong conservative, old-fashioned perspective about what is sexually moral? Well, sexually allowable, I should say, because morality
Well, yeah.
is too strong a word.
There's a lot of things that go into it. One is the protection of the woman in that relationship, right? So that's why any Muslim would consider sex before marriage a sin, and the whole reason why marriage happens is one to mostly protect the women, right?
Protects the women from what?
The male, just from society, from the male that she's marrying. So let's say the person who gives the daughter away, for instance, always has to be a man, has to be her father. If the father isn't there, then it's the brother. If the brother isn't there, then it's the uncle.
Okay. So
When you get
I already see a problem right there, because
yeah.
already there you're essentially putting men and women in different classes. You're putting a man above a woman in terms of decision making, as opposed to letting both men and women be in control of their own destinies.
Okay, so if I
That's the modern way of being. So I already you've got something that's antiquated.
what if you look at it this way, right? Only a man knows what another man is thinking, correct? So if, for instance, my I have a child,
I
my daughter
don't.
wants to get married
Okay,
to
go
this
ahead. Go
man,
ahead.
right?
Go ahead.
Yeah, my daughter wants to get married to this man. Um, he might be deceitful to her, but straight up, I can see through the BS because I'm a man myself. So in that perspective, it makes a lot more sense. It's not like, oh, women are not equal. It's because the man knows the man best. He knows if his intentions are in the right place or the wrong place, right?
Have you ever discussed this with a woman? I mean, because it just occurs to me that uh, in the case that you've got misogyny and domestic violence against women, and I think women are, this is just me now, are very well aware of what's in men's minds, and we don't have to talk around this. Obviously, sexual urges on in both men and women are very strong, and testosterone is a sort of a aggressive motivator. So I think we need to have more childhood education and lifelong education of males to learn how to properly treat females rather than this kind of protection that we have to make decisions for you. That makes no sense to
Well,
me.
knowing
Why
the source of
go ahead.
guidance yeah, I would say knowing the source of the guidance and where it's coming from is probably the most important thing. And
No,
then
no, no, no,
after,
no. The source is not important. It's the information that's important. It's the value of the information. It doesn't matter. I don't really care if it comes from a religious book or a self-help book or current laws or the parents of the boys and the girls. It is the information that counts. If as long as the good information gets across, that's the important thing. And schools are another thing. We like to see some of these things in schools to some degree. Obviously,
how
it's a little bit
how-
little different of an
what
issue on sex education from parents versus schools, but that's a little bit of a tougher issue. But
what
just
would you say it would require? Like, let's say, you're from the States, correct?
yeah,
Okay, so what would you say would it would require the states to turn it into how those places are that are under the Sharia law without following the Sharia law? Do you think it can ever be as safe of a place, as clean of a place? People are very respectful and like thoughtful of each other, like all
I
those
think
different
I
kind.
think Sharia
What
law
would you
is just too restrictive on what they allow to their citizens to do. So it's largely
Yeah, so
that's
what
very
would you recommend this?
simplistically. I'm not a fan of that. So
No,
I mean,
I understand.
I understand that if you put together laws that say that are very extreme, for example, if somebody steals, you cut off their hand, you're gonna get less thieving. I think that's very clear. But I think in modern day that's just a little bit too cruel, and we can do better than that with a good legal system
So
and some sense of social responsibility of helping to um, incarcerate and rehabilitate people that are prone to problems.
do you think that, so let's do a comparison, right? Because in my mind it clicks and it makes sense and it works and I've seen it working, right? So the example that you just brought up, a thief stealing, there's two sides to each coin. Now you're saying cutting the thief's hand off, no, that's too much. But when the person, he goes into a store, the person is literally working day and night to feed his family, that's his only source of income, and a hooligan comes in, starts stealing stuff, starts messing up the place. Now you have to look at the other side of the coin. Now you're too focused on the thief, but what about the victim, right?
Mhm.
Sometimes they don't get justice. That thief is going to go to jail, he's going to come out a couple weeks later and he's going to do the same thing. But if he knows that his
That's
going
not
to be chopped
justice.
off.
Justice is retribution, and that doesn't necessarily reduce the recidivism, which is what you're talking about him coming back out, right? That's the crucial point is to I agree with you that you want to reduce the rate of recurrence. That's why
Right.
that's why I suggest rehabilitation to reduce recidivism, so that people are
Well,
less likely to do crimes when they get out back out.
it's because Islam focuses more on preventing it before it happens rather than giving the person consequence after. So people in their heads knowing that their arm is going to get chopped off, they're not going to go stealing. They can be homeless, they can be starving, but they're not going to be willing to risk if that is sane. They're not going to be willing to risk their arm no matter how down bad they are, right? So it's more of the preventing it before it happens rather than it's happening many times over and over and the person just keeps doing it with no stop. And the other side of the coin, eventually a lot of stores get hit, a lot of families, don't have a source of income anymore. Like there's this thief in New York. He went into a jewelry store, just stole everything. It was like a couple of guys, but he was the main man that headed it, and he went to jail. They couldn't prove that it was really him, right? So they just let him go. Obviously it was him, but there's nothing they can do because of the system and the laws that they have set up in this place. And so you always have to look at the other side of the coin. What happens to that person?
Do you remember the movie Minority Report? You ever seen that?
That was Will Smith.
Tom Cruise, actually. It's
Oh
probably
no.
20 years ago. It's basically about a criminal system where they would, there was AI and technology in it, but they would be able to, they would try to predict people's actions based on their thoughts. So had thought police. So they tried to prevent crime by arresting people before they did crimes. So it sounds a little too close to that concept,
No, no, no.
because
Okay, so the
because
person.
like one thing you said
Sorry, go ahead.
a minute ago is that they couldn't prove a guy did it, but he did do it, which is that's troubling to hear, because if you couldn't prove that he did it, then you don't know that he did it. Obviously, you can suspect, but how many times do you want to punish innocent people? I mean, that's a valid question. What percentage of innocent people would you be willing to accept for, like, say, for every 100 criminals that you arrest? How many of those would be acceptable to have innocent under a arrest everybody suspected kind of a system?
Yeah, so let me just answer the first thing you said before that. You said that it was similar to that movie where they were literally arresting the people before they even committed the crime, right?
Yeah.
I would say it's different from that. We don't just grab the person because we know that he's gonna do it and just off goes the arm. No, no, it's not like that. But they actually have, there's a whole judicial system that it has to be proven that they were the ones responsible for the theft in the first place. Then the consequence would come after. So it's not, we're not like acting based on assumption. So it's different than that. And then what was your second question that you said?
If you had, because in the United States, we largely try to protect the innocent, right? We would rather let a criminal go than have an innocent person stuck in jail. So if and of course, no system is perfect, right? On predicting and picking up suspects for crimes. So if you have a very strong system, very retributive system, how many criminals, how many innocent people would you be okay with capturing to get 100 criminals? Where's the
None.
balance?
Zero.
Where's the balance?
No innocent people would be captured in order to catch criminals, right? Because it's still a whole investigative situation where we're still trying to figure out, okay, was that person responsible? Was this person responsible? That's
So
the that
how do you
that
prevent false accusations.
Well, there's a whole like legal system under the Sharia law. I mean, there's exceptions to that rule as well. Even if the person did steal, but they're a child, obviously there wouldn't be as harsh of a consequence. If the person isn't in their right mind, there like that wouldn't apply to them. So for every rule in Islam, there's always an exception of.
Yeah.
It's not a general rule that applies to everybody, right?
Let me ask you some a similar, well, a little bit off topic, but the thing that bothers me about Sharia law, because you're making some good points here, so this is fine, but the thing that bothers me most about Sharia law and similar types of things, like you see this in Mormon communities too, where they have internal justice. Um, in a civil
Oh,
society,
take it into their own hands.
say again,
You mean when they take it into their own hands?
right? Yeah, yeah. In a civil society, you've got civil law, right? So I I I think it's a really bad idea to allow any group of people to apply subsets of laws once you're living within a pluralistic society. There should only be one set of laws that everybody's um, beholden to.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the things I see a problem with Sharia, because I see it. I remember there was some issues in London where there were certain neighborhoods that were trying to put in Sharia law within their neighborhoods, and these were fairly small neighborhoods, but maybe 10,000 people. Um, but they would try to have Sharia law instead of the civil law, and of course you've
Would
got
that be
you've got
the
you've got times where
would that be the government that's doing that?
no, no, this would be
Oh, just the
the
citizens.
local citizens and imams who wanted
Okay.
to have the right to have Sharia law within their own communities, basically ignoring civil law, because obviously
Yeah, I would agree. I would.
if you got two sets of laws, you're going to have just different you're going to have conflicts uh, of rules.
You're right. No, I totally agree with you. I am against that because, our Quran, right, tells us to just follow the rules of the land as long as it doesn't directly go against our religion. So, when you're living in London and there's a whole government body system thing going on, you can't just create your own little club on the side. I totally
Yeah,
agree with that. We do have to follow the
yeah,
law of the land. Yep.
that's good. So that makes you more of a moderate then.
Do you? So I have a question. Do you think you should be able to be in a country, no matter what country, and use blasphemy?
Yeah.
Do you think
Use
that
blasphemy
blasphemy?
in
Do
any
you think?
country.
Do
No, I
you
mean
think?
you've got um I think when you need a bit of a compromise,
Yeah,
to be
but
fair,
what I'm saying,
because if you have again a country like the U.S., which is pluralistic, um, blasphemy to and you've got freedom of speech too in most countries. Blasphemy is a thing that's allowed by law. Now, if
yeah,
you're in Iraq or Iran, let's go with Iran, I guess. Oops, you still there?
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, I'll still be here. I'm just
there,
gonna go
there
on
you
mute.
go. So if you're in Iran, for example, then you've got blasphemy blasphemy laws there that are punishable more severe, but I think there should be some allowance for foreigners to at least be deported. And it was a there was a movie called Midnight Express. It's gonna be referencing movies tonight, about 30 years ago now. That where a guy was caught in a Turkish jail for 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 carrying drugs, and basically put away for life. Or I don't want to spoil the end of the movie, but um, because it was a good film and with a really good score, by the way.
So what I'm saying is, for our other guests, do you really, for our guests, as far as blasphemy, do you think that countries should mandate like what somebody says against a religion? Like it can be that strict?
I actually don't know how to answer that. I never even thought about that. I mean, honestly,
Well, you
I believe
should.
in the, huh?
You should. I mean, you're asking us, so it's a valid question to ask back.
Yeah, yeah. So, I would say freedom of speech, but I mean, it is disrespectful, but I don't think that it should be against the law. You should be able to say whatever's on your mind.
Yeah. Okay,
So
so how do we I agree with the sort of the disrespect, but respect doesn't really isn't really an illegal thing or a required thing. It is again, most democracies are pluralistic, where you're allowed to have a difference of opinion, and if one person or group, I mean, I can take any weird cult and criticize them, and they can um, woo, they can say that they are. Um, sorry, I'm losing my train of thought there.
Well, someone could also blaspheme out of ignorance, right? And I feel like that's fine, but
Yeah,
and you educate them, but if they're knowledgeable on the subject and they're actually, so I can speak personally for me, right? I'm a Muslim. I'm a devout Muslim. I would consider myself. If someone came across to me and they didn't know anything about Prophet Muhammad and maybe they said something disrespectful about him, I would educate them. But on the other hand, if I feel like they know everything they need to know, but they're using all types of different words to describe them right to my face, best believe that I'm gonna defend my religion because I love my prophet, and I would tell that person verbally, "Hey, don't do that. You might come across the wrong
but
person.
shouldn't
Don't do." And
but
if they
shouldn't
keep going, then that's when we don't really turn the other cheek because we're not
yeah.
Christians. We confront the truth, right?
Well,
So
well,
we're
maybe
what right do you
or
have?
maybe we
Hold on,
stop having the conversation.
hold
Like
on.
I can tell you that Muhammad, I feel like he was a pedophile and he was a very evil person, and that's my opinion. Well, if you feel differently, we can have a civil conversation. But if you get upset or it gets heated, then the best thing to do is just to end the conversation. And that's the thing is, and it's the same thing for Christians. There's some Christians who can have a good conversation, and there's some who get heated, and that's where you just end the conversation. But I would not expect a Christian to try to stab me or a follower of Muhammad to stab me if I feel like he was a pedophile. That's my opinion. And I feel like I have good facts to support my opinion.
Hold on here
I
one
just
second before you respond. Londo, if you don't mind, let's not go with the word pedophile here
Well,
because
okay.
it's too triggering. I mean,
So,
you make a point, but using the word pedophile
okay,
really triggers.
I apologize.
so
Is there a different word, Phil, that I
Well,
could
it's
use?
done. You're done now. But I mean, in general, there are
Okay.
lesser ways to
I
make
mean,
a
I
point.
mean,
But
I mean, now I do want to confront it, right? Because do want to know, is he making that comment out of ignorance or out of knowledge? He said based out of knowledge or facts, right? I would ask for supporting evidence now.
okay, I want to go with the content of the question and not that specific
Okay.
issue, because the thing is, you said that um, I forget your name already. You know, this isn't going to work
Jindu.
at my age.
Jindu. No worries, boss. Jindu.
Thank you. Um, because you say you don't turn the other cheek. Well, if you're in a country where speech is allowed, I don't see any justification for getting to any point where the other person makes you so mad you that again justifies uh, violence in any way. I mean, I could see justifying letting them know how you feel and then walking away. Uh,
So,
Now,
um,
granted, a lot of people don't do that, but I mean that should be
so
our ideal goal.
let me just put it into perspective, right? I'm an African American living in the U.S. and I'm also a Muslim, right? I would take more offense to someone insulting my beloved prophet rather than calling me the N-word. So I would get more furious about my religion and about my religion being
Yeah.
disrespected rather than me and myself, right? So that's how much it means
But
to
do
me.
you understand that that does not give you the right to be violent against other people? That
No,
your
I
level
feel
of triggering,
okay.
your level of triggering, and similarly my level of triggering on whatever my
Yeah.
soft spot issues
Could I
are.
also could I point something out about that? There's a difference between these two things. One of them, you're stating an opinion on religion, and the other, you're committing racial prejudice. So it's like on one hand you have free speech, and on the other hand you have hate speech. So the reactions that we have as a community are different to those like two examples you brought up because of that. So
I'm even to an extreme. I'm not going to be one here to defend hate speech, but the point of the concept was that the speech itself in a free country does not justify violence. The only thing that justifies
Yeah.
violence is crime, and then that justifies a certain level of captivity by the civil law enforcement. That's the only
I
type
just
of violence, and even that
I do understand. I do
does
understand.
not allow for things like beating and things like that. It allows for arresting and
Yeah, I mean, I do understand from your guys' perspective why you do say that, but because of my religion and because of who I am, that's the route that I do have to go down. But I just want to address Joanne
Okay.
in the
What do you
hold on,
mean that?
hold on, hold on, hold
No,
on,
no,
hold on,
no.
hold on,
I
hold on.
need
I
a
would just want to
clarification.
address
No,
Joanne.
I
I
need a
just want to address
clarification.
Joanne in
I
the
need a
comments.
clarification.
He
hold on,
said
Londo,
Jesus.
No, no, no.
Hold on.
I need a
Hold on,
Give me one
clarification.
sec,
Did
boss.
he say that he's okay with
Give me one
violence?
sec. Give me
Londo,
one
hold
sec.
on, hold your thought, Londo. We'll come back.
Yeah, yeah.
Go
I don't
ahead and
mind talking to you, bro.
respond to Joanne. Joanne says Jesus doesn't promote violence.
You said Jesus doesn't promote violence. He is okay with the unaliving of children. He's okay with the unaliving of innocent women. He's okay with the unaliving of donkeys. What do donkeys do? I don't know. So if you're saying Jesus doesn't promote violence, then you need to read your Bible. You need to educate
It's one of those inconsistencies. Yeah. Okay, Londo, what's your point now?
Okay, so when you said you're okay with it, are you okay with violence against people who upset you, who may criticize your prophet or your religion? Because
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I take offense to that. Yeah.
but are you okay with committing violence against those people?
Taking offense is
I
fine.
mean, it's I can always choose the better route and forgive, right? Because that is what God tells me to do. But I can't just withstand someone insulting. And this is all personal, right? Every Muslim is not going to give you the same answer. Some might say, "Hey, like I would rather forgive because my prophet was a forgiveful person. He
Are
was
you justifying this based on your own personality, or based on the religion that allows you to
both, right?
justify?
God doesn't say if you stand up for the religion, no, but he also says you can also forgive. So I do have two
I
options.
I wouldn't even say you have to forgive them. I would just say remove yourself from the
Yeah,
situation.
you don't have to forgive. Yeah,
Yeah, well, I mean,
but do you see the problem with a thought process like this is always going to have a higher risk of escalating into violence, and I would hope that we can agree that we want to de-escalate, or at least prevent from making things worse
And
by having violence then the other violence for its own sake, and then violence that perhaps the other people can think, well, now they're justified to come back at you. So
and do you understand that this is how maybe some people may perceive the religion, because you are like, you would get upset and maybe do violence because somebody criticizes something that they believe that they have facts, and you would actually be violent towards somebody that lived 1500 years ago that you and I don't know like anything truly about. Like, we don't know this person. It's not
Well,
like it was
speak for
our
yourself.
uncle or like somebody that we lived with, but it's just like you're actually going to do violence for this? Like,
Yeah, I
are you for
probably know
real?
more about a man that lived 1400 years ago than you do about your own grandpa. So
No, that's not true. That is not true.
That's not
I know
true.
more about my
That's
grandfather.
not true.
That is not true because my grandfather was actually here, that spent time with me, that physically talked with me, that actually showed me things, that provided me lessons in life, that taught me things physically here. So I'm sorry, but your premise just falls apart.
that's okay.
Yeah.
No, then that's not okay. You're again. My concern is again, why would you want to cause violence? Because there's many people who are going to have different opinions
Well,
on
let me
many
take that
things,
back. We're not the
but
one causing
violence
violence,
is
right? It's
never
always act of
no.
self-defense. It's
No,
our
violence
Quran.
is never the answer. No, okay, self defense is different. I'm okay with self defense. Protect yourself. I would never wish harm on anybody. So if anybody tried to cause harm to you, then protect yourself because violence is never the answer. But
Okay,
again, but if
you're blowing
you
it out of proportion. Can I just explain real quick about? I don't know if you're actually like you know a lot about the religion and the rules when it comes to that, right? In the Quran it says if you take a life is it's as if you took all of humanity's life, and if you save one life, it's as if you saved everybody, right? So in that sense, it's all that whenever you see a Muslim get violence, is not because we're trying to oppress. If I see a Muslim brother oppressing someone, I'm condemning that, right?
What
But
about
just not
for apostasy?
leaving the religion.
Yep.
I mean, if you live under, it depends on where you live, right?
No. What about
Yeah,
apostasy?
if
What
you're
is
under
it
the
depends on
Sharia
what the
law.
book says about apostasy.
Yeah, we don't divert. We hold truth to what our book says. That's what being consistent is.
And
Because
what is
it's not like
what is
okay,
the
we're not.
punishment for apostasy?
Is it stoned to death?
Yeah.
Right, I believe so. Yep, yeah.
So that's really not putting the highest value in human life.
here's the problem. The Quran,
Alaikum, brother.
there's several verses that talks about the
Hi, Sabi.
unaliving of the
Hello,
unbelievers.
hi everyone.
How are you doing? Welcome in.
So
I'm doing great, thank you.
So the Quran talks about committing violence against the unbeliever or the pagan. It clearly talks about that.
Okay, so could you pull up the verses?
Why?
That because you need to know there's a lot of knowledge into the religion, right? Do you know when it was released? Do you know why that revelation? Because the whole Quran wasn't just boom and it's all there. No, it was released over the span of years, 23 years, right? So every time a revelation was released is because of something was happening, and maybe because it spoke to. So when the Prophet Muhammad went to Medina, um the Meccans, right? They were still scared of him. They were afraid that he would grow powerful and all that. So they started killing unaliving
Unaliving.
the Muslims. Yeah. And that's when God sent down the revelation of, hey, you are allowed to protect yourself. If someone's coming at you with a sword, you gotta show them a sword too. So you have to always understand the reason behind the revelation. It was for self-defense.
Wait, can I bring up something really quick?
Yeah.
I would like to point out that we were talking about like a person that was making like a critique on your religion. We aren't like coming at you with a sword. Like, of course, hey, if someone's trying to like,
He
you know,
just read a specific verse, I think, from the Quran. So that's why I was just answering, because he said if disbelieve or something, and I feel like the verse has similar words that I'm thinking of. So, hey, Lundo, what verse was that? Do you know?
You have to give me 1 second. Let me pull up my Quran real quick. Actually, I found a Quran at my house. It was sitting on a bench. It was soaked in water, and I brought it in.
Oh,
I dried it, and so yeah. It's a miracle. It must have been given to me by God.
Yeah, that
Yeah, dude.
divine revelation.
Yeah. So we're looking at, is it Sirah? Am I saying that correctly?
Yeah.
Sirah 9. So chapter 9, verse 5. And when the forbidden months are past, then fight and slay the pagans wherever you find them, and seize them, beguile them,
Wow, what verse is
and
it?
lie in wait for them in every stratagem of war.
Sorry,
If
I
they
missed the verse
repeat,
number.
Give us the
You
it's
verse
said
again,
Sirach,
Londo. It was 5, what?
Sirach chapter 9, Sirach chapter 9, verse 5.
9:5. Okay.
Oh, and it says, because God is forgiving and most merciful. But so it says, go unalive these pagans, but God is merciful. Yeah, good for you. And I know, here's the thing. If you have
And
to
I
tell
want
me
mercy too.
context, that's the thing. And here's the thing. What I want is just evidence that it's true. We want good evidence that this is the
Never
true
the truth.
and this is true. That's all we want.
Yeah, so now let me give you the context, right? The
Oh my gosh.
Muslims,
I
the,
don't really, I honestly,
you,
I really don't
you,
care about the
you,
Well, no,
context.
now you're
let
just
him give
being
the
ignorant.
context. I want
Now
to
you're
hear.
Okay.
just being ignorant. You need to know the
Yeah,
context.
I want to hear that.
So,
What's the
No, but
context?
because Christians can
Ramadan.
do,
Hold
Christians,
on, Londo, give me a sec. So Muslims fast during the holy month of Ramadan, which is actually coming up, and the Muslims and the polytheists that is addressing in that verse, they actually had an agreement, right? They said no fighting in the holy month of Ramadan, but the polytheists violated the agreement that they had with the Muslims, and they were unaliving them during the holy month of Ramadan. So now God released that revelation and he said, hey, if they're transgressing, you got to defend yourself. So I don't see a problem with that verse. If you said before, if hey, self-defense is totally okay, like, you don't want to
Enslavement
just
isn't
get pummeled
self-defense.
on. So if they're violating an agreement that they have with the Muslims and they're unaliving them, should the Muslims sit there and just, take it? What would you suggest the Muslims do?
yeah, that context, I do not read that in chapter 9, verses 1 through 4. So where in the world is that context coming from?
The hadiths, we know a lot about the time of the prophet because of the hadiths. We have a whole timeline. We
I
have
think
a lot of history
the
on it.
context probably comes from verse 1. To
Okay.
the polytheists, you believers have entered into treaties with.
So, Londo, what would you suggest the Muslims do? Are they justified for being able to fight back now?
Well, I mean, I guess here's the thing is like, it can, is,
Wait. So let me look at this again. So, but once the sacred months have passed, unalive the polytheists who violated their treaties wherever you find them. So this is not self-defense anymore. This is retribution. So this is a whole different thing. If someone comes at you at a moment, you have the right of self-defense at that point. If you wait months and write down this offense and then come back at them later, that's retribution.
That's not self-defense because we're not allowed to do anything
No,
on that
that's not
holy month.
self-defense because you're no longer at risk. Do you understand that part? So I see
Do you
I see your context. So because
Do you know why
they
they
have
didn't?
violated treaties. But
Do you know why
the way we want people behaving in modern societies?
Why do you have an issue with that not living, dude?
Sorry, say again. Zach?
Why do you have an issue with the unaliving?
Why do I have an issue of unaliving? Because I'm a living person and I don't want to be unalived. So therefore, I feel the same way about other people. We don't. I think
That's
as a
not
general rule, we don't understand others well enough to justify unaliving anybody ever.
so
Well,
you're saying that
almost ever.
you're saying it's retribution, but it's because they couldn't do anything on that holy month. I mean, it's a holy month. Your brothers are getting slain. They're praying right next to you. You can't do anything about it. You have to wait for the holy month to be over. Then in
Then you've given up the option of self-defense. If
Yep.
that's the way what your religion teaches you, you are no longer at risk, and you have given up that option of self-defense. You are then into a territory of negotiation.
I mean, here's the thing. Here's the thing. Let's say you and I get in a fight and we protect each other and we break it up and we walk away. That does not give you a right 4 months from now to come over and shoot and do something, unalive me. That's not how it works.
Okay, so when a criminal commits a crime in the U.S., right, and the FBI or whatever is investigating for five years, 10 years, 20 years, right, finally
Yes.
found this dude and they finally put him in jail, that's okay, right, after 20 years, but not 1 month.
Well, first off, a citizen does not have the right to retribution because we have due process. That's how due process works better than just taking someone's brother or sister because they did something to your family. So
our religion actually condemns that too. If you always have to go for the person that did that to you, if you actually go for a family member or something like that.
Have you ever seen a Clint Eastwood movie? Do you understand the difference between citizen violence, citizen retribution, and a police system?
Yeah, it's when they take the law into their own hands, right?
Vigilante.
Right. So that's what you're advocating, vigilantehood, basically. So the proper thing to do would be to have
it's not me.
It's
not me advocating this. It's Allah, right?
I understand. It's the book. It is from a culture that was 1,300 years old. That should not apply today.
Yeah, but
we have outgrown that.
But
morally, we have outgrown that by leaps and bounds.
But this is not saying you can take the law in your own hands. This is supposed to be, for example, if there is a Islamic country or Islamic nation state, then it's the same due process. So it's not like I can take the law in my hand and do that. That would be criminal.
I'm not seeing where it says that in the verses I've heard, at least in this live, because it tells them to go out and unalive them. So I'm not seeing that.
I mean, that's you can't reconcile religious laws and systematic laws, right? They're literally
that's the problem. That's the problem.
Yeah, you can't reconcile
because as soon as you have civil law in a country, all religious law, all corporate law becomes secondary.
Yeah, separation of church and state. It applies to all religion.
That's a very broad modern concept. So simply because there are so many religions and everyone has their own rules, so you cannot
apply it to everyone.
You can't apply it to everyone. Yeah, so you basically have to put your civil law above religious law.
I mean, here's the thing. I get it that in Islamic countries, there is a lot of security people able to just leave their car going, and I believe there's there's something to be said about it. But at what cost did it take to get there? And the question is there a secular way to get there?
And I would ask also, does everybody have the freedom to leave that culture? And I understand not everybody can because it's financially challenging to do so. So that's why I have a problem about all the restrictions put on women in Afghanistan, for
and
example.
Oh
and again,
yeah, I mean, there's some things that Muslim countries do that is against the religion. So it's the perspective of not judging um religion, or not judging religion based on people, but judging the people based on what the religion actually says. Are they
Oh,
following?
no, I judge the actions of the people, and a lot of times the people are
No, no. Well,
using
no. He
some.
brought up Afghanistan, right? And that is just one example, because there are things that people, Muslim countries, or the people in governmental, positions and whatnot. There are things that they do that is against Islam, right? So I condemn that.
Yeah, but
Like,
again, they're using religion just like evangelical Christians are using Christianity, and that's the thing, is that they're using the religion to justify their actions, and you're using your religion to justify yours. That's what's very funny, is we have all these different groups within each religion saying, "Hey, wait, I'm doing it right. They're wrong. We're right." And it's funny because we're outsiders watching everybody point fingers, and it seems like it's not the biggest group that controls
the
the
loudest.
narrative. It is the one that's the most, honestly, the most violent. They're the ones that control the rest.
here's one of the problems that I have with fundamentalist Islam is there's a profound interest to putting together a global caliphate and spreading these types of laws. So you can make an argument for, which I think you did make a pretty decent argument for having a certain set of laws within a country that is entirely dominant with members having that religion, to the degree that you allow people to leave if they wish to leave, and you don't have things like retribution on women for doing this or that or not doing this or that. But when anytime you've got an expansionism, and the greatest risk right now on expansionism is Christianity, frankly, which is we would have said in 2001 that Islam was the expansionary concern, and now it's Christianity just as much, if not more, particularly
What do you
in
mean
the
by
United
that?
States and Africa. Uh, any
The,
religion that wants to replace the state or put itself above state law, civil law.
the
Oh, you
thing
mean
is,
like back like the Roman Catholic, when the church had more power than the government, like
Right.
in that type of
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah.
Yeah,
but the
yeah.
thing is, if you
Because you
can allow
don't,
me, Janvi.
except for fairly small geographical areas, you don't have um, um, a population that is almost entirely of one religion.
I mean,
Yeah,
Christianity is very progressive, so I feel like it'll bend the knee to anything that comes, and
Well,
if
that's
I
why
can,
it's different
Christianity
than.
is
if I may,
there's a mix. You got progressives and very fundamentalist
if I may,
conservatives.
Good
if I
evening. Thank you
may,
for letting me up.
Okay,
if
hold
I
on,
may,
hold on.
Phil,
Who's saying if I may?
it's me, Sahih.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, because this is the thing, right? There is I think what I've just noticed right now, because I cannot apply certain verses, as there are things for the individual in the Quran or in Islam, and things for the society. So, and you cannot take the law of the society in your hand and apply it against the society. It has to have a hierarchy um of a system, just like any modern state. And the clash with Islam, or the difference or the misunderstanding with Islam, is that uh, Islam, the separation of state and religion, is contrary to Islam, is contradictory to Islam. The modern state that we have, the modern secular state, at least if we may say from the last century, the last 100 years, it is based on separating the church, the religion, from the state. But in Islam, that's not the way is supposed to be according to Islam.
Can
It's
I go
supposed
next?
to it's
which
supposed to be yeah
which is why we can't have Islam
So,
trying to take over anywhere where you have civil law,
yeah of course
because
so Lee,
it's
it's
gonna
a
be
replacement system. It is not
yeah
it's
it
not
is
something that gets along with others.
yeah it is
It
it
takes
is
over.
it is. This is not to say it is not, because obviously you're gonna have an opposing view, and it's going to ultimately not gonna be the case. For example, but now if you look in any Muslim majority country in the world, any Muslim majority country, they have a separation of state and religion. There is no one Muslim majority country. I don't know about Afghanistan exactly and how fine-tuned it is, but except Afghanistan, which I don't believe is well fine-tuned because it's just come out of the wars and stuff. But in reality, there is not a country that's a Muslim majority where the state and religion is one, and this is the case. So the
Well,
verses,
Iran
for
is pretty
example,
close to it, isn't it?
huh?
I'd like to explain the verse. Can I go?
Yeah, you can. Just if I can make the conclusion, because for example, this verse now is clearly it's talking about warfare, but this is in a
Are,
is if you it's in the
are
capacity of a state, of a society, not an individual that me, I wait 4 months and then say there has been a war between this country and that country and I belong to that other country. Let me go out on the road now and cause mayhem like the fanatics or extremists or people who are like the terrorists would do. This is clearly is terrorism when you go out and you can commit like individual acts where they go. Say, for example, in the country I live in is in Europe. If the country I sympathize with is another country outside Europe and is a Muslim majority, and they're at a war, and I wait for 4 months, and then after 4 months, I'll go out in the street of London and I start causing mayhem with my own hands. That's clearly is considered criminal and terrorist in Islam. This is not something in Islam considered so. There is a problem where the application of the individual rights or individual practice of Islam and then societal practice is quite different. So that really matters. That's the point I was gonna say. But the problem with Islam that will never be understood is until if there is a Muslim state or country where Islam and state is one, a religion and a state, then these kind of things would be clarified. However, Afghanistan is not the best example just because it's not a natural occurrence, it's due to wars, conflicts. So I don't know how
Well,
it
All right.
would.
So
Afghanistan. Oh, go ahead, Ralph.
I'll
so
ask to
so I
go
don't know
next.
how you can say there's not a country that isn't
The,
theological basis
Oh,
as a
hold
Muslim
on,
country.
Ralph. Ralph Jones was supposed to go next. I think he was waiting
yeah,
for Cedric to finish.
I was supposed to go next, so I wanted to add some context to that verse in the Quran. What they're talking about is like in a time of war, when you have an established caliphate, which would be an Islamic country. It's not like Iran with the Persians or Afghanistan with the Afghans, but a caliphate where everyone lives under the Sharia. The Sharia has been established, and there's an Islamic government. And say you have a group of Hindu people living in your caliphate, and and you have a treaty with these group of Hindus that they can occupy this piece of land inside the caliphate, and they can live with peace, and they'll be protected by the Islamic government and the Islamic military. And say that these group of Hindus violate that peace treaty and do something to work with an enemy of the caliphate, then that would be treason, and that would be betraying the Islamic peoples and government that occupy that land. And that would, in like any country in the world, the penalty for treason, even here in the United States of America, is death. That's what it is. That's what that verse is referring to. It's not referring to personal vendettas or um, something like if somebody betrays you that you have the right to go smite their necks. It's talking about in an Islamic state. Is that
So
understood?
wait a minute. So you're telling me that if another group of people betray the caliphate, that they should be punished. But wait a minute. You're telling me that 100% of the population is going to be punished when probably not 100% of the population was involved in the treason or whatever. I mean, do you realize that in essence, you're punishing everybody for maybe what a few people have done?
No, that never happened though.
You do understand that it's not 100% of the population that's doing the treason or
Yes,
working
yes,
Right.
of
with the
course.
enemy. It's not the
And,
little
and
kids. So you're going to go
that
in and you're going to unalive everybody or kick
you
them
don't
No,
out
no.
unalive the
because,
kids.
No, 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 no,
No.
oh, you're
no,
going to kick them out. You're going
no.
to kick them
There's
out
an exception to
for a
every
few
rule.
people.
No, the Islamic teaching is that because this has happened in history. The men who are in that group that committed treason were unalive, not children and not women.
Okay, that's good. What happened to the women and children?
They were taken. They became part of the community that of the Muslims. I think. I don't know. Sorry, I don't want to talk about something I don't know.
Doesn't this seem rather barbaric and antiquated? This degree of punishment.
That's how the world was during that period of time.
What
That's
about
why I say antiquated. 1,300 years ago.
Yeah, what about today in the 21st century? Should we have governments like this? How should we have governments for the people?
So
I
I'm just confused about. Someone said that there weren't any state Muslim religious countries
There
where
aren't. There's no caliphates.
no, no. Even a state. Even a state. Even a state.
So the country Brunei isn't ruled by Brunei, the prince or whatever he is, right? Whatever he calls himself, and it's not their foundation isn't on the Muslim faith. Or is your contention that in order to truly be under Muslim law, it has to be complete total Sharia law, however you pronounce that,
Yeah,
and it has
constitution
to
has
be
to be the
absolute
Quran and the
follow.
Sunnah.
Because if you go with that, if that's your definition of a church run country, then there has never been a church run country because none of them have ever followed all of their faith's teachings.
It's not
Right.
that. It's not the. It's a church ran state. It's that it's a land that has been occupied by a group of people where the Sharia has been established. And if it's a caliphate, then it's not going to be separated by race or ethnicity or what
Well,
kind of.
I'm not
He's
talking
making a
about some
different
other
argument.
definition of an area. I'm talking about,
I get
say
you.
that there's
Rafo.
not a country that is, based in the Muslim faith as the method of operation of that country.
Yeah, I think
Just
Sure,
like
there's
you
countries
just like
that
in
are
the past,
yeah.
just like in the past, the Roman Catholics heavily influenced and basically ran the political discourse in France and in all of Europe basically for years and years and years, and everything was heavily influenced and basically everything was centered around the Christian faith. But that doesn't mean that every law was based in Christianity or that all Christian or biblical laws were followed, but still make
yes,
that a
Rafo.
There was a
Christian.
period of time when the Roman Catholic Church was the state of a land. That did
John,
happen.
what he's saying is that
Not
there's
an absolute. There was never a country that
Yes, there
followed.
was.
There was. Let me finish. There was never a country that followed all the dictates of laws that are in the Bible. Never.
No, it's not the Bible. It's the Catholic Church itself. That was a Catholic. It was the Roman Catholic Empire, the Roman Empire, the Holy Roman Empire, and it's not Christian.
Right, but
It's
it was
Catholic.
still did not follow all the dictates of the biblical
Oh,
text.
you can argue that. You can definitely
Yeah,
argue that.
that's subjective. You could think that they didn't, or some people could think that they did. But the Catholic Church, the Pope, was the king of a particular piece of land.
No, there was other kings, and there
was always competition between
there's
the Pope
there's
and others.
monarchies. And they use religion and stuff, but it's no different than what you see in like countries like Brunei, where the politics are heavily influenced by the religion. It's the same thing. It's no different. In
Rafael,
Iran, and there's probably other examples of that. Saudi Arabia, stuff like that.
Rafael,
Just because they don't follow all the dictates of the religion, or they don't institute Sharia law and stuff like that, doesn't mean it's not a religious based country.
this is the thing, Rafael. If you notice, sorry, if Phil, if I just to make a conclusion to the point, I get what you're saying, Rafael. But say, for example, I'll give you an example right now. Iran is the best example. The Ayatollah is the head of the state. There is a president, there is a prime minister, I think, but there is the Ayatollah that dictates that they cannot disobey, whether the president or the prime minister cannot disobey the religious leader. Now, in Islamic country is simple. It is the constitution is the Quran. There is no man-made written constitution that could be done. Literally, the constitution you have is the Quran, and obviously you're gonna have the Sunnah. So whether it's applied, who applies it the best, whether there are some being missed or some are being applied, that's a different story. But the actual text for a constitution is the actual Quran, because it's got the legislation for every matter of life according to the Islamic understanding.
Right.
Host, I just to interrupt.
My
Okay.
point was just
Go
that
ahead.
there's
What-
lots of countries that have in the past and exist today that are more influenced by religion than they are non-religion.
That's true.
Right, but that's
And to say that just because they're not totally controlled by a priest or something doesn't mean that they're not a religious-based country and their law isn't based in the religion that they're running under.
You can't say neither, unless, because according to, if your country is considered to be a Christian country and ruled by the Christian religion, then the constitution of that religion has to be the Bible. But at least in Islamic understanding is that the actual constitution is the Quran. If it's not, there is no country in the world today that has the constitution as the Quran, or has been in the last 100 years.
I think that's an extreme. I don't agree with it.
Well,
I know it's an extreme. but that's
Isn't
the
Iran and
application.
Afghanistan pretty close to that at this point?
I think so.
There's
but
six.
Iran is for Persians. It's not like every Muslim around the world can migrate to live in Iran because it's not a caliphate. It's for
Doesn't
Persian.
have to be.
Okay.
Doesn't have to be. It can be a
There-
state.
It's
It
for
can be a state
Persia.
anywhere.
Okay,
can
so
be a
there's
state anywhere.
there's six theocracies right now in the world: Afghan, Iran, Saudi Arabia, the Vatican City, Yemen, and Tatian. I don't even know what that is. Those are six theocracies currently in the country, in the world. 5 of them are Islamic.
Anyways,
Right, but it's for the peoples of that country.
But what about the people who don't want to be under that? Do they have, let's say there's somebody who was born there, do they have the ability of leaving? I guess that's the thing.
Yeah, of course.
Do they have the ability of getting their, do they really have ability of leaving and going where? Where can they go?
It's a majority rule, though. If it's a majority, we're talking about majority. If the country is a majority Muslim,
So
it's
it should be
No.
majority?
yeah.
So
if it's,
So the minority, what if the minority, the women want freedoms? What if the women want different ways of life? Like,
they have to be subject to them to the rules of the majority.
no, they do not. They do
But this
not
is
Just
how
have
it
to.
like
works
every
today,
country,
modern
that's
No,
democracy.
how countries work.
Today, this is
no,
how it works
no.
in modern
This is
democracy.
Yeah,
okay.
we do that
Yes,
in the
this
U.S.
is
as well
how
too.
I
theocracies
know that's
and
how the countries
dictatorships
work.
and authoritarians act is or the rule of the mob. No, it's
You
about
can't
human
just do what
rights.
you want in a
And
country.
if
You have to follow the
I'm
rules.
sorry, but if you
No,
don't care
London,
about human rights and you just care about a book because a book says a thing, this is what it gets us, and this
London,
what gets us
London.
horrible things.
This is the thing. You see now, if you're in a country where the majority is Muslim country, and the application of in that country of the law is the Quran without any other text. Now, if you're a Christian and you live in that country, your right as an individual, as a minority or an individual, as a Christian, should be 100% respected according to the Islamic religion. You do not have to be forced to convert your religion or anything. Your rights will be respected for you. However, for the Muslims there that are living there, or for anyone, you're gonna have to be subjugated to the rules of the majority, because in a democracy, that's how it works. And contrary to what people believe in Islam, that there is no Islam is not against democracy in its root, because when the Prophet passed away, there was a leader that came after him, and that leader that came after him, he came through a consensus, and this is why the word Ahl Sunnah wa Jama'ah came, the people of the tradition of the Prophet, and the Jama'ah means as the community. So there has to be a consensus, and the majority voted, agreed for someone to be the Khalifa, which is Abu Bakr. So in its root, Islam is not against the rule of the majority, while respecting the rights of the minority or the individuals.
There's some rules that should never be up to the majority. There's some
Yeah.
rights. There's some rights
Well,
that the majority should never ever be able to touch,
Yeah.
and that's what I'm saying.
And
Sahi,
that's
I had
why
a
we
question for
have in the
Sahi.
U.S. and most countries a Bill of Rights or something similar, and we're considered a republic, is because it's not a democracy where it's just the rule of the majority, that there are some rights that are reserved, undeniable
Yeah.
to everyone, regardless of the majority rule. So the majority can't just will those rights away.
And
Yes,
So that,
but
that's,
that's
Sahi, I had
that's
a
the whole
question.
political.
imposing a punishment for apostasy, as an example, would be an example of a law that is no longer
the
compatible with modern times.
the thing about
Sahi,
apostasy,
I had a question.
Phil, is this. Like, for example, if I'm in a Muslim country, fully Muslim country, established Muslim country, and I convert to my religion, no one can know about it, right? Because no one can tell whether I have left Islam or not, and I live in a Muslim country.
So don't
But the
ask, don't
problem,
tell is what you're suggesting is the best system.
um, well, that's an idea you just put. But what I was going to say is
We
this:
tried
if
that in 1990. It didn't work out too well. It
yeah,
was a
but
half-assed measure.
if for my own protection, or for my own this is the thing, because you have to respect this is you have to respect the rights of others as much as your rights to be respected. So for Muslims now in a country that's fully Muslim, they
No,
believe
I
this
do
is
not have to respect another person's right to impose on me.
you don't have to. I don't have to impose it on you. But once you leave the religion and you try to impose it on me, try to convince me, propagate it, do all this stuff that are that are technical and intellectual and smart, that you could think you could use and inflame the
Wow.
minds of people. I'm being honest. I'm just trying to read for
I
you how it's going
understand,
to
and
be
I think
done.
it's terrible. I think it's terrible what you're saying.
So Mike,
That you're
what's your
not in modern times. We have discourse. Okay, we disagree. We do not attack each other for having the discourse. To say that
That's not
that
really true, though. Believe there's a lot of attacks. There's a lot of um, uh, subjugation for people who differ from others' beliefs, even here in America.
So
And
what
we
I'm
have
really
laws. We
confused
have
about
laws about that.
This
is,
Hey,
thing
is
is
you're saying there's freedom.
hold on, host. I want to ask you: Are you aware of what Elon and Trump are trying to do to the Constitution right now?
And they are not American. They are what they're doing now is un-American. They want to be post-constitutional. So
Oh,
that
and you
is not an
condemn that.
example you want to be using.
So you
So
condemn that, like you're against that, though, right?
Yeah,
yes.
very
Okay,
much.
perfect.
Yes.
I just want to
So
make sure.
so
I'm hopping
the
off,
big
guys.
question I
Assalamu
have.
alaikum, sahih jihad. Take care, host. You've been very wonderful. Take care, everyone in here. Take care. I hope you have a blessed night.
you
Have
too,
a good
brother.
one, bro.
Assalamu alaikum.
Thanks for
Bye-bye.
being on.
So the question I have is you're saying that people who aren't Muslim but they're in this Muslim country or whatever can do the precepts of their religion and stuff. They're left alone because that's what the Muslim faith teaches. Is like you don't interfere with the others as long as they're not unaliving you or whatever you were saying. It's the context beyond those other events, right? So,
Yes.
however, when I was in Brunei and I spent quite a bit of time there, there were several things that I could not do, and
Like what?
like have a beer.
Okay, then they don't want alcohol in there.
I can't have drugs in here as well. I live in London.
That's
I
right.
can't do cocaine on the road.
Right. I mean, just because you couldn't have a beer, I mean,
Right, but
there.
the reason for that was not based on any reasonable law or anything. It was only because it was against the Muslim faith,
The
purely and
United
simply.
States
And
also
there,
banned alcohol for a period of time.
yeah, there's lots of places in the U.S. that ban alcohol sales in a county and
The
stuff
whole
like that.
country
Throughout
did it.
counties, there's all kinds of stuff like that. Doesn't make it right, but
The whole
but
country did it.
Do you think
Banned
and
the
and
alcohol.
and I agree that's wrong. The reasoning for it was wrong and everything. But it doesn't belittle the point just because someone else did something similar. There were also other things I couldn't do while I was in Brunei, and we were told, don't do this, don't, if you go out. I mean, the Christians that were with us, when we went to a restaurant or something, they were told, do not bow down and pray for your meal and stuff. Like we were literally told, like, you do this,
that's wrong. That's wrong. I
you
can
can get in
tell
trouble.
you
You
How are
just
you
can
a
gonna
get
stop
bird.
someone from praying?
jailed for it.
No, that's out of place. That's I completely condemn that. That's not. I don't believe that's in Islam because
Right.
you're. If it
But
says you're allowed to practice your religion, then you're allowed to practice your religion without any limitations according to how your religion permits it. So if you're going to pray and start your food with prayer, and they tell you don't do it, they're just taking things out of place and extremism
right.
and
But that right there is the essential problem with every religion I know of. And that is every religion, whether it's biblical or it's Muslim faith or Hindu faith. I'm not sure about, I'm sure it's true in others too. I haven't researched it fully, every one, but if someone has one that's different, but in all of these, there are different people that read this holy book or whatever it is that's put down by their God or their special being, and they interpret and they get different meaning out of it, and they use that book to justify different actions on the same text, right? And different sides of the coin on the same text. If any sort of supreme being were to write a book, right, a guide and laws and stuff, they would write it in such a way that it is unequivocal, and there would be no discussion about, does this mean this or does this mean this? Does this mean I can do this? And someone else say, no, it says you can't do this, but you can do this other thing, right? So that in and of itself tells me that these books are not written by any sort of greater being. They are written by man, because
And it's
man
interesting.
Then
would
you don't
leave
have to
that
follow
open
the
to
religion.
interpretation.
But you're the one who moved to that country. You have to respect the laws there, Ralph.
Oh,
he's
I
talking
agree.
about all
I
space
didn't
and
I
place.
didn't
He's
move
not
to
trying to
Brunei.
limit
I
it.
was working
He's
in
not trying to
Brunei,
limit
but
it to a place or a space. He's trying to say as a universal value. And the thing is with this, Raffle, is this. there has to be a state law and order. This cannot be applied by like anybody's whim of interpretation of this is how I see it, hence you can't do this. And there has to be a state law and order, and there has to be a law enforcement. And if it's not, then it's mayhem. So whether it's Islamic state or is a Christian state or is a secular state, these things has to take into context, knowing that without state law and order and law enforcement, and the state has legislated its rules, then is open to mayhem, because 100 million people will have 100 million interpretation.
So are
I'm
you?
I
Wait a
am
minute.
not
Wait a minute. Wait a
arguing
minute.
that there shouldn't be law and order.
So you're saying that North Korea is okay?
No, I don't. I'm not saying that. How did I
No.
get
Are
that?
you saying North Korea is okay?
No, I
He
don't.
didn't
I
say
don't believe
that.
North Korea is okay, man.
So then, okay, but it has rules. It
I mean,
has
yeah. See, this was the problem we had
beliefs.
with that they had in Iraq, where they had a fairly stable um, country with a fairly low crime rate because there was so much law imposed on them based on the word of a dictator. So by nature, people are diverse. You get 1,000 people
Iraq
that
was
are
secular government though.
The Islamic governments are not
again,
diverse.
the point was dictatorship, not actually religion, because the point is the point was there was one single way of applying to everybody. When you've got a group of people, you take any 10 people, even let alone 100 or 1,000 or 1,000,000, there is going to be diversity. And if you want to give the most freedom in that country, you have to develop institutions and systems that allow for various types of personalities to get along and get together with each other. You can't
Yeah, but
have
not everybody's
these
gonna
I'm
be
insulted by
happy.
your words kind of stuff. Therefore, I get to do whatever this or that a very harsh legal system says. It's not modern morality. It is not. That is very antiquated and old stuff to go
Well,
that harshly.
we in
The thing,
America have the most people imprisoned
Yeah,
the
and
thing is,
and
we have a problem.
terribly enslaved.
That's considered a problem to be resolved.
the thing is, Phil, this point, like for example, if someone changes his religion or converts or leaves all religion together, and in an Islamic country, and what's the consequences that would be for, um, like first, th- from what I understand, is according to the law, like it has a rules and regulations of how to deal with it, and ultimately how it is perceived at the end of the day is literally seen as cartelling corruption, is not even seen as a freedom of thought, because what would be done is this, you convert from you leave the religion, then you go and you're gonna be preaching about it, speaking in a society that's completely Muslim, and it's
And
going to
that's
show.
fine. That is fine.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you. I'm trying to
Yeah.
see how the law sees it, because the perspective is very important to see how it's seen, because it's literally seen. It's not even seen as something as a freedom of thought, because what is seen as, it is seen as a corruption, because what will be seen now, you've corrupted yourself. This is how it's perceived. You've corrupted yourself. Now you're going to corrupt society, so you have to be stopped. So if you win the argument, you can be put in according to the legislations. You can go through court, and you can say, yes, I truly don't believe this is real, and you can win the argument perhaps in the court, or you can lose the argument to why you believe it's not true. But ultimately, you will have to be you will not have the right to go and project that onto others, because it's seen as a corruption, which is the same case of, for example, of the cutting of hands for the thief. This is not like somebody steals, you just go and cut their hands. That is put as a preventative measure, and it's not like to make everybody handicapped and then lose lose the whole country. But if it's something becomes prevalent, or to stop it to become prevalent, then
I
as
see
a
your
prevent.
I see your point. I it's a valid point, but it is antiquated. It is antiquated
By antiquated, you mean
by about a
outdated.
thousand years. It is considered
So when you
it
say
is considered cruel and
antiquated,
unusual punishment. It is considered an overreaction by modern standards.
but who's to say modernity is the
Modernity is
has the most morality
modernity always
in
has the most
according to
morality because modernity is progress based
that's
on
fine.
what we had before. Is one step better than what we had before. That's why it's called progress, and that's why the arc of the moral arc always moves forward by definition. Because if it moved backward,
Well, Phil,
you'd have worse
allow,
worse cases.
allowing men to compete in women's sports is also seen as unfair, but it's also seen as progressive. That doesn't make it right just because something is
I think
progressive.
that's a mixed issue because there are issues. It's not that simple. There are issues which I
But
don't
it's subjective,
I'm not
though.
that aware of. It shouldn't be subjective. It should be more objective in terms of testosterone levels and other stuff. It's not as simple
Was it
as
unfair?
men competing with women. So I don't think that's
Was
a
So
it
good
you
unfair
analog.
would
for?
agree that that's wrong, though, right? That men should not be able to compete in women's sports.
Well,
Was it
we deal
was
with
it unfair
these
for?
things in
Hold on, let
sports.
Phil finish, bro.
We deal with this in sports all the time. And for example, if we see things that are unfair, we s- we generally
As a society.
there is some adjustment to the sport. Look at boxing, for example. They've separated into divisions because it's unfair to put a guy who outweighs his opponent by 100 pounds, right? So I would think that there needs to be some sort of objective way to separate these types of people if that's the case. Whether it be again, I don't know the science, so I don't advocate a specific thing, but testosterone levels or something, whatever's appropriate to make things level enough. I mean, but on the other hand, not everybody is allowed in the game. I mean, we don't allow we don't we allow, but you're not going to be competitive if you get into professional basketball and you're 5'6". There's like one guy who has been
That's
successful.
that's not a question of morality. You said that modernity is always going to be the most moral framework
In general, as a
because it's the
general
most
rule, yes,
progressive.
because it has the history of previous morality behind it. So therefore, you get a definition of
Not
what can
necessarily
be
because
one step better.
yeah,
So
but history repeats itself. Like we've seen this whole like the trans stuff and all this, and men can be women and all this in
So
these
okay,
societies and
why are
they
you so
collapse. Hold on,
trans?
Linda, let me
No,
finish.
why? No, no,
And they
no.
fail.
I just don't think it's appropriate to allow somebody to be so trans. No, you are absolutely transphobic.
No, I'm not. We're having a
You are
discussion. If you're
transphobic.
going to start
hold,
doing
hold
this, you're
on,
going to
No,
get the live
no,
ban.
you are transphobic.
Jones.
Here we
Jones.
go. Now you're going to get
Jones.
us
Is
banned.
it
You're going to get me banned because you
You
can't
are
have a conversation.
transphobic.
Jones?
Okay,
Jones.
Londo, settle. I understand your
One
your
second,
point,
guys.
Jones.
but
One
Jones.
let's hear
second,
the
guys.
point. I'm trying to
Don't rush.
get a
I'm
little
trying.
off the subject. So
Yeah, let's just change
Jones.
it because London's going to get me banned. He's going to get the
Jones.
live ban.
Jones.
Can
Just one question. Do you think it's unfair for Michael Phelps to have competed in the Olympics?
No.
Why? He was genetically advantaged against all the other men he was competing against.
Okay.
Is it any
let's just
difference?
change the
Is
subject.
it any difference for anyone else competing with genetic differences?
Okay, cool. I don't want to get banned because London's freaking out, so just forget it.
I interject then, please?
yes, go ahead. Say
here's the thing. You did not once come up here and say, hey, maybe we should set some boundaries. How long have they been on HRT? Like, set some good guidelines. It's not just
London,
one day
we're
somebody
just
puts
having
on
a
a dress
conversation. You're
and
freaking
gets
out.
into the
Name
thing.
calling,
But
attempting to
no,
get me banned.
they
I'll get banned
identify
for that.
again.
I
You
was
can
just
call them.
talking.
They can call
Jones, you don't have to respond. You know, you can just like he can say what he feels, and
no, no. He can't be a transphobe.
Here we go.
can I speak now?
Londo.
Can I speak, please?
Hold on. Let me say, Londo. I'm on your side, but I think you're being a little bit triggered here. So let's just let's just let them get off the point here, because this
I
I
am
honestly the problem I have with this topic is that I don't have enough information, and I don't think anybody else here in the room, unless possibly you do, Londo, has enough information to deal with this topic appropriately.
Well, my best friend is trans, and I've been having to deal with a lot of stuff lately, and so I am
not about trans per se, but about the issue of sports.
We're talking about sports.
About the sports.
Okay.
Phobic of something.
Yeah, so
Ridiculous.
this is what I wanted
That's why
to
you
say.
can't have a
basically.
conversation with those type
This
of
is what I
people.
wanted to say.
Let's move on. Let's move on.
Yeah. So this is what I wanted to say now, because I could fully understand where London coming from, and I wanted to say one thing. And for example, right now, earlier, because what's that word you used it, Phil? This something 100 years ago is from 100 years ago. This is not the mentality or the mindset of a modern mindset.
Yeah, well, antiquated, outdated.
Antiquated, yeah, that's sorry, I couldn't. Yeah, that word is antiquated. When you said, this is what I wanted to say. This is for example, in today's societies and countries, we have something called gagging order. I don't know if you know about it. So, for example, a certain individual that knows certain information or can say some things that are sensitive in a way that can cause danger to the state is prohibited by the law not to say it. It's not to say. I'm not saying it's a fair law. You might be against the law, and it might exist, and it doesn't mean that you accept it. But because
a gag order, is that what you're talking about?
Yes, a gag order.
A gag order is usually imposed because there's something that is going to potentially cause damage to someone else in a criminal case, or bias a jury or something like that.
Yes,
So
and sometimes
they
to
don't
the
want
state
certain.
as well, right?
It's largely to prevent bias.
Yeah, sometimes to the state as well. It's not necessarily just individuals. You can also have that, so you don't speak against the state. And when this thing about
not in the United States. No, we have freedom of speech here, so you can speak against the state. I mean,
about the government, certain things about the government that you know about, you cannot just talk about them, because you will have this thing against you not to talk about them.
well, we do have what do you call it? The help me, Ralph. Security.
So if you have security clearance and you're dealing with some classified or top secret information stuff, yes, then in order to get that clearance, you have to say that you're not going to reveal this to other people and stuff like that. But it's not the same thing as a gag order. So someone who doesn't take that burden upon themselves to get that security clearance and get that access to confidential information and stuff, is bound by those rules, but just the common citizen is not.
Yeah, you see, sorry, London. We're just gonna finish my point. I want to address what you about what you were talking about as well. But before, because I thought about this thing that in modern society, because you said this is from antiquity, and this is the same way of because the country, if it's a fully Islamic country and somebody has left that religion, he can keep that to himself or to herself. And if he's going to say it against the state or against a religion, which is ultimately going to be against the state, and he could be stopped by the law not to say it, by the law of the state, Now, obviously, and this is not contradictory to modern society, because, like I said, you need clearness and this and that. That's been said. It's the same way. It could just be technically different. And for example, now what just London, Jones just gave an opinion. I don't like Phil. You said maybe London, you're overreacting, but not necessarily because you're going through it. You have got someone
Yeah.
close to you that affects you more than affects me or feel emotional, at least at this moment, because somebody that's in your somebody more closer to you, you know. So we have always the relativity between us as well, but also this is the same way. He just spoke generally about some issue and it touched somebody, or for example London, and in that way is the same way when you speak about somebody that literally worshiping Allah, and then it feels like somebody's insulting Allah. He just said it's a transphobic, you're gonna be called Islamophobic. So it's
Exactly, Sahih.
yeah, so I'm trying to make that, so it's ultimately in here the boundaries is going to be, this is how I believe in it. My
But I'm not.
freedom,
But I'm
my
not going to
freedom.
go out and attack Jones. I'm not going to
You
beat him.
are. You're gonna get me banned with your nonsense.
I'm not going to go fight you. I'm going to maybe give you a hug or talk to
Are you
you.
gonna report me? Am I gonna
No.
try to get on
No,
live
you guys,
tomorrow and
you
you're
guys
gonna
are, you
it's
guys
gonna
are,
say I'm
you
banned?
guys are both here having a discussion.
No.
It's
I'd
not,
have a beer. I'd have a beer with you when we'd talk.
yeah.
Okay, if you're open for a discussion, but you lashing out at me, it usually means I'm about to get banned.
Well, the
No.
problem, the
You
problem,
said all the trigger words.
yeah, the problem with lashing out, Londo and everybody, is that
I know.
it takes the conversation down from something broader to something
Exactly.
very specific, and
Because
it
you
kind of
say,
ruined the moment. So,
here's the problem.
but I'm on your side, Londo, in terms of the topic.
You
So,
said men and women's sports. That's the first issue. They're trans women. I guess that's the first thing, is because I feel like that's the word that people use to really rile up and to really demonize trans women.
yeah,
Okay, Londo,
It,
I was making a point about modernity and progressivism. If you disagree with that, cool. Then we'll just
the
move on. I
the
didn't mean to
interesting
offend anybody.
the interesting thing on that topic is, if you want to look it up, is look up the history of the Olympics and why there are women's sports in the Olympics right now. There are lots of sporting events like shooting. I don't know, can I say that? Pew
Probably
pew,
not,
pew
honestly.
pew events and stuff that have men and women's categories solely because women started competing in them and were beating the men, and then they said, "Oh, well, we need to make another category for this because we can't have that." It's several events. It's very common in the history of the Olympics and sports in general. So it's in general, it's not an issue of men competing in women's sports or women competing in men's sports. It needs to be, and the point about Michael Phelps, it's genetics and testosterone levels and all kinds of stuff. So if we want to make it where it's competitive, we need to do it more like what's done in boxing, by weight class. You have some measurement for whatever sport that is, and you put people with similar stats in a category and they compete against each other.
We have
So
men
like
and women
basketball, you
mixed.
could do the same thing. You could have a
We have a mixed already game
five
stage,
foot to
Rafa, right?
5'5" basketball competition and a 5'5" to 6 foot competition, and it would be more competitive within those ranges. I
Yeah,
don't know
Rafa,
what those are. That takes a bigger, longer discussion, but that's where I think it needs to go.
but we do have mixed games right now, right? You can have general knowledge questions, and you see men and women intellectually competing in whether you call it sports or mind games or mind sports or whatever. There are these mixed games where men and women can play together. So, but it's true what you mentioned about the testosterone and the physical, because there is measurements, just like Phil said earlier about heavyweight, lightweight in boxing, and everything. So, I think this is just a matter of getting it right. But it's not like it's not possible to get it right. It's possible to get it right if it's been thought of without prejudice and difficulty. People can actually get it. But I was just going to ask a question, honestly, because I believe this is so important. And I want to ask it to Phil, and
go,
maybe can ask the panel of if it resonates with you, Phil.
go ahead.
Do you believe that my freedom should not include your freedom as Phil? Sahih, my freedom should not intrude your freedom. And what are the or transgress into your freedom? My freedom should not
Should not
transgress.
transgress into my freedom. Yeah, as
Yes,
general rule that's a general
yes,
good rule. It's like they say, your freedom to punch my face ends at the surface of my face. So so
yeah.
or
Because
just
now,
swing your arms or whatever.
yeah, and I think that should be, because you've got in even in a humanistic way, you have a very I've heard you saying about what is the golden measure or the golden bar for morality,
The golden
and
rule. Yeah.
yeah, golden rule. And I think what you said is makes a lot of sense, because ultimately I am a Muslim, you're not a Muslim, but at the end of the day, we both believe we are human beings. We know we are human beings,
Yep.
so we have to, if for example with Jonas, he's Muslim, I could deal with him, or have the Islam as a Muslim be brothers, but also there is a brotherhood in humanity. So I
Right.
have to find that common denominator with with all humanity. So it's not necessarily I have to subjugate my religion into you, and I
That's a
should.
good point. It is a good point. I mean, I think of it too as I think of sports as an analogy. Like you're being if you're on a particular if you're a fan of a specific sports team, that doesn't mean it that doesn't mean you should hate other sports teams. You got to realize that you enjoy the sport, and we're all part of the sport. So that's the difference between religion and all of humanity. So
No,
it's
no,
Yeah,
no. I think if you
because
like rugby, you have to hate football. I mean, that's just granted. I
no,
mean,
no, because
that's
honestly,
there's
guys, in
documentation on
Islam,
because there's not enough money for both, right?
if you really don't, I don't know if you guys know about this, but in Islam, there is this real serious rule from the Sunnah of the Prophet and also in the Quran, that there is three levels. You have brothers and sisters from your siblings, from your mother, because it's all in relativity. The first relation to me is my brother, my father, my mother, my sister, my father, brother, and that network of relatives that comes to me. And the second, and even before it, actually, I have to respect them, but the religion one comes. So the one with my blood, it reinforces the one of the religion. And there is the third one, which is a brotherhood or sisterhood in humanity, in humanity. And this is something that I think Muslims were failing most of the time to actually project, because we have this between us as in relative. For example, now, if my father, I can disagree with my father, I can disagree with my father, I can be a witness against my father according to the Quran. If my father is in wrong, I should be a witness against myself if I'm in the wrong. But what I have to do also, I cannot cut off my father. I'm not, according to Islam, it says never raise even your voice to your father or your mother. But if they come to you, to your religion, just distance, stop talking to them about this issue, but never cut them off, because God does not like you. But if they come to you and make you stop your religion to practice, just keep your distance from them, but never cut them off.
Yeah.
So there is this relation
What?
of the
I'm sorry.
blood.
Whoever's got the music going, could you turn that off, or if possible, because it's
Sorry, that's me. Actually, it's a prayer time, and my phone app is calling for prayer, so I'm gonna go
oh
to the mosque so I can join you when I'm back.
okay. All right.
Can you hear it? It's
I
actually
can. Yeah.
the call for prayer. The call for prayer from the
Yeah.
phone. I'm in London. It's 5, almost 5:30 in London.
All right. Sorry. It's just
I'll
it's kind of
I'll
loud
join you
and
back
it's
after, guys.
repetitive.
But it was good talking to you.
All righty. Thank
All
you,
right,
Saeed.
Sahi, have a good one.
Take care.
Cheers. Cheers.
So, so I don't know if he's aware of this or not, if he can even hear this anymore. But the thing is that in Christianity, Christianity teaches the same thing, and I think probably most religions teach the same thing. You can share it talks about sharing the gospel or sharing the word with others. But if you read the text, it doesn't say anything about enforcing your beliefs on others. And however,
But Islam doesn't either, though.
well, that's not how some people read it, because some people believe it should be. Yes. I mean, just like in Christianity, there's people who believe that the Christian Bible says this, so we need to make sure everyone follows these rules, whether they're Christian or not. There's some people in the Muslim faith who believe that, and vice versa, the other way around. There's people who believe, no, you're not supposed to force other people to be Christian, and there's Muslims who believe that, no, you're not supposed to force other people to be Muslim. And
Ralph.
We have a problem. We have a problem with Christian nationalism right now.
Well, Ralph, also progressives and liberals share these beliefs too. I mean, when America invaded Afghanistan and Iraq, it was to spread Western liberalism. That's exactly why they went over there. It was to spread Western liberalism, to extract them of their natural resources. That's what it was.
Okay, those are two very different things.
No, it's the same thing. It's the same thing.
George Bush and Dick Cheney were very aggressive corporate people on a holy mission. They do not represent progressivism by any stretch.
The Western liberals is what they are.
No. You got that one wrong.
No, by far, all the Republican Party and the Democrat Party, both in America, are by definition classical liberals, inspired by Western liberalism, Western liberal thought. Although they call themselves Republicans and one calls themselves Democrats, they're Western liberals.
How do you define liberals then? How are you defining liberals? That's not the way things are going in current culture.
By most of European standards now, our far liberal party would be considered conservative in their view. So It's all a matter of perspective.
Yeah, we are way right compared to other countries. I mean, Grenangle was here. Is often here. He talks about how conservatives in that country are quite progressive and liberal. So basically they're far right, it would be our center. So our right is further right than it's ever been, and it's been going further and further right since about the 1980s.
That's not true. Look at Bill Clinton. Look at the things he advocated for. Even Hillary
Bill Clinton was not a Republican.
Hold on. Barack Obama in 2008, and I'm just using this as an example. I'm not agreeing or disagreeing with what he's saying. I'm just using this as an example. He said that marriage is between a man and a woman.
And then,
now that would be seen as something that's far right, but he's a leftist.
And then what did he do? He presided over marriage becoming legal. You understand that there are things that politicians have to say sometimes, similar to what Clinton did. Clinton did the don't ask, don't tell because he wanted to make progress on the gay issue in the army, but he couldn't go all the way, so that was like a halfway compromise. Wasn't a great one, and it was kind of doomed for failure, but that was kind of the point of it, that it would be as things got progressive, it would be taken
further
back.
left since then. Everything has shifted further left since then.
That's progress. Progress is always to the left.
Subjective. That's subjective.
Because yes, it is subjective. Because fellow on YouTube is just retracting all their messages. Okay. Whatever that was. So because when you're conservative, you don't want change. You want to stay things basically like they were. Now, change happens, and over time they do accept and evolve a little bit, but it's always after the fact. That's kind of the definition of conservatism. Liberals always want to problem solve.
At a more moral standpoint. Which doesn't mean you end up or land in a more moral framework rather than what it was before, just because it's so-called progressive.
It progressive is basically a problem-solving side. If you see an issue, you want to make it better than it was yesterday.
But
And
you
so
can
in that
make the
sense,
wrong decision.
yeah, and then you're free to correct it. That happens all the time. It's nothing ever gets resolved. Life is too complex. Things never get resolved on one step, you know. And if you make a change that results in unintended side effects, you should then go back and tweak and reevaluate and readjust and figure out another way to do it, for example. So,
Right. So if you're at the point where you might have made a mistake, you're still progressive, but you just made a bad decision. And then you're saying to go around and correct it. But prior to it being corrected, you're still progressive, but wrong.
yeah, you can be wrong if you're progressive, sure.
Okay.
But you're trying. That's the whole point. If when you're progressive, you're trying to resolve a problem, and you're generally trying to expand the moral arc and you expand human rights. You know, you see the left pushing for childhood school lunches and for medical care for the poor and things like this, and you see the right trying to say people should, child labor should come back, kids should work for their lunches, and of course, religion should be more into society, but that's
Right,
I
Phil.
don't know.
So, if you want free healthcare for one particular group of people, right? Say a small portion of whoever, at the expense of other people, how that wouldn't be fair to the people whose expense it is.
Well, because it is taking care of the poor. I mean, we
Right.
have an obligation for those that can afford it. And as people make more money, they pay more to help the poor, to help
But
those in need, to do
Londo,
as Jesus would command, to take care of those less unfortunate. So I
right?
feel like we have a obligation to take care of those people.
But not at
Zero.
the expense of someone who is unable to provide that help. For instance, if you own a small business, you make uh, 40K a year, which is not a whole lot of money. You are not gonna qualify to get free healthcare, but you are going to be expected to contribute to that, to healthcare for poor people for whatever reason,
It depends.
which is unfair because
Well,
now this person can't afford healthcare for themselves.
yeah. Well, is this person making 40K? Are they married? Do they have kids?
Yes,
We know
Okay.
that if you do not provide health care to the less fortunate, they end up costing society more money.
Yeah. And
Because
in your
number one, they wait until they're sicker to get medical care, and when they do get their care, they go to emergency rooms, which is the most expensive way of getting the care.
yeah.
right, and
And
we still pay for
in
it through
your
insurance
case,
anyway.
if you only make 40K and that's it, and your spouse doesn't work, then and you have kids, you're probably going to qualify for some type of credits because of Obamacare.
Right.
And
You
That was
don't.
so
that was the point of Obamacare.
yeah, and
Now,
so
Yeah, but it
Obamacare was
didn't work
barely
out.
got passed.
yeah,
Remember?
unless
So
your spouse works and really your income is 80 to 100K on your tax return, then that's a different story. But here's the thing, we're talking about people who are not making that much money. We're talking about seniors. Here's the thing, it's funny, my mom only
We have
makes
that
my
Medicaid.
okay, here's the thing, my mom is single, my dad passed away, she only gets $1,800 a month, which she has to pay her medical part D. So she gets 1880 or 1680. She doesn't qualify for any assistance, so no food stamps, nothing. She's really there on the cusp.
If
And
she's
so
unemployed, she qualifies for food stamps.
no, because she's retired. She's 68. So she doesn't make she's poor, but not too
She doesn't
poor.
make any money, then she qualifies for food stamps.
No, because she gets Social Security and she's just above. She only makes $16.80 a month.
But so she gets other government assistance that is supposed to help her with food.
Nope, just her Social Security. Just
Well,
that,
she can spend that
just her
money
Social
on
Security. That's it. That's all she gets.
So, Steele, you've been quiet. What's your perspective? Or did you come in here with something that you wanted to talk about?
Well, I wanted to ask you a couple of questions as an atheist.
Okay, let's do that.
So I was just waiting for my, I didn't want to change the subject or anything, but
We've been, I'd rather do religion
been
than
everywhere.
politics. So, but yeah,
Yeah.
let's change the subject. Go ahead. What's
as an atheist, what is your definition of a god?
my definition? I mean, I use something fairly standard, which is to say a supernatural element, a creator. That's kind of about it, honestly.
Okay, so a creator, an organizer, destroyer.
No, then you're adding more baggage.
Gotcha.
I mean, a creator is an organizer.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that destroyer is probably the word that sounds a little bit off to me.
And are you more of an atheist because of scientific reasons, or just because there's so many religions out there that it's like, okay, well, I mean, this just doesn't make sense?
Well, because there's so many, I think that's some of the strongest evidence against any of them being true. But it is largely because of the progress of scientific knowledge that has accumulated through the century and millennium. And a lot of the things that used to be believed about supernatural stories and things like that, we now figured that is either untrue or there's just insufficient reason. And the arguments for God all fail, which I was really surprised to when I started to run into that. I started to notice that when I was first studying this topic, and I thought, is it me? I'm not that smart, And then you hear people like Matt Dillahunty making the arguments legitimately with proper logic and stuff that I couldn't follow at the time. And I was shocked how weak the arguments for God were. So it's kind of a combination of those things.
Gotcha. And same with like evolution, those types of arguments too, is what kind of drew you away
Well,
from
we know evolution's not an argument. That's a body of evidence and information at this point. That's beyond repute at this stage.
Gotcha.
We're probably about 70 years beyond repute on evolution.
Yeah, even though we don't have all of the details, there's obvious signs of it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a weaker subject is abiogenesis, even though it's starting to go in that direction, or it is going in that direction, but it's nowhere near as strong as evolution.
Yeah, because there is some arguments of the evolution aspect is so complex. The DNA is a literal word, and so you can't like create a word without having a creator create a word for a living being.
Sure you can. Sure you
DNA.
can.
So still,
Sure you can.
you believe in evolution?
Oh, of course, yeah.
I'm asking-
The concept of information in DNA. Of course, you can have. It's not a word. It is a sequence of functional building blocks, if you will. So when a certain amount of a certain sequence of amino acids results in something that is functionally successful, and the first thing it has to do to be functionally successful is to survive, right? To be able to reproduce itself. That's just as far as it goes. It just over time has become much more elaborate, extreme, obviously. I mean, to build a cell and then to build animals, it's a very extreme thing. But we've had 3.5 billion years to do it. So nature has.
And I guess where I struggle, right? Because I always struggle of man, is there a God or is there not a God? I just look at it's almost like it seems to me that it's this world and universe is almost organized perfectly for a simulation, right? And
Those are kind of two
it's like
different arguments. What do you mean organized for a simulation?
it seems like it's organized in such a way that we're living beings here. We don't know truly whether there is a God or there isn't a God
Right.
because he hasn't revealed himself, so to speak, to
Right.
everyone, right?
Right.
But it seems that there's still a sense of we can create and we can destroy as we're living here on the earth. We can create paintings, we can create buildings, we can create, we can create certain things, even elements.
And that's the
And
difference between natural and artificial.
yeah. And so if we kind of have godlike features to, three-dimensional matter, so to speak, where we can create, destroy, we have our own thoughts, that we've been given a godlike ability to be tested on those godlike abilities, whether we create or destroy, and we could be judged upon whether we create or destroy. Does that make sense?
Not the judged part. I mean, we are just elaborations of elaborate results of the physics of the universe. You know, largely we come together because of the properties of a carbon atom and its ability to bond just strong enough to hold together, and also have the four different bond directions that allows it to create complex chemistry.
Yeah, but the argument on the other side, right, from a creationist standpoint, and I go back and forth as I say, the argument on a creation standpoint would be in order to create such as I would put it, a simulated kind of reality for us, right? Where we can't see God, we have to rely on not necessarily faith, but he judges us based upon whether we create or destroy, whether we're good or we're bad.
Why do you get? I don't get that you when you start to throw in judging. There's no judging in nature. There's nothing that implies judgment. The only thing in nature that is there is function. Why do you go to judging?
The only reason why I would go to judging is because if there is a God, the only reason why he would put us here would be to judge what we do with our godlike abilities while we're here.
Why do you think that? Why couldn't we have had a creator that just created the universe and no longer exists, or a creator that created us and just to watch and see what we do, like a Q kind of character out of curiosity? Why why couldn't we have had a non-sentient creator that generated the laws of the universe by some sort of natural force of a cosmic level?
That is a very good question, and I would read, why do you need to ground it in logic when it just works the same for everyone, right?
Right.
But if you think of a creator and he's given you power, which you can think, you can create, and you can destroy, there would essentially be a purpose, not necessarily a Q individual that, would just.
But there is no purpose. Again, we come to be according to the laws of physics. They just brought back an asteroid a few months ago and got into it, or a vehicle to an asteroid, and they got into it and they found amino acids and nucleic acids. Because of the way our laws of physics work, these things come to be just naturally by the way they're structured and by the magnetic attraction of molecules. And given the right conditions in certain locations, that results in higher organisms given enough time.
Hey guys, I'm out. Thank you for having me on the panel, Phil.
Okay. Follow if you
Have a
have
good
it.
one, sir.
Check back another time. And
Absolutely, man.
as far
Always
as
enjoy your life.
far as dropping goes, I don't know what that was. That wasn't me. Something, but welcome. You were welcome back in. So take care.
Oh no, you didn't drop me. It's all good, Phil. Have a good
Yeah.
one, man.
All right. Take care. See you next time.
So my only argument against, that they just kind of happen, right, is consciousness doesn't necessarily just happen.
That's the puzzle still. Yeah, we don't know. We don't understand consciousness at this point. So that's still a, I don't want to call it a God of the gaps point. It's because it's not a God question. It's more of a dualist question, dualism
So
versus monism.
when I think of it as in a logical perspective, and this is where I, as again, I say, is there a God or is there not a God? I look at the totality of everything, and for him to create a simulation to where you and I are able to understand or learn about the universe that we live in, right, through physics, mathematics, the mathematical equation that it would take from the beginning to the end of an all-knowing God seems to me that we're put in a simulation here with a consciousness to see how we either create or destroy. So just like in the military, you try and go into the Navy SEALs, right? There's a weeding out process. Oh, you can't keep up with the formations. You can't deal with the cold. You can't deal with this.
Right.
And he weeds out the destroyers, so to speak. So I can see a logical point of a test. No?
Again, it's not a forward-looking thing. Well, it is something that is a result of the conditions that animals and nature is in. If the climate changes on us, I mean, my own backyard, I've got a fruit tree that did not fruit last year because it was too warm. It decided to try to fruit in November, and then it got completely thrown off. So that's an example of evolution because that tree is going to die off to be replaced by perhaps a similar tree that is less sensitive to temperature variation. So evolution is not forward looking; it is the result of change and adaptation by default. Right? Species individuals don't adapt. It's the population that changes structurally by what's left over after after the influence of the environment affects some of the population. Some then survive better than others.
But
That's the
then,
natural
Phil,
selection part.
wouldn't you have to agree though that if you were to let's say you were God and you created the universe and this simulation, and you were trying to create a world where there's a brief amount of time because of the laws of nature and the laws of physics that humans could be able to adapt or evolve to, and they had a short amount of time with our consciousness to be able to create and destroy. Um, just because, I mean, tomorrow an asteroid could hit, or the poles could change, and you know, anything anything can happen.
Big volcano or something like that.
Big
Yeah.
volcano. There's a structure to it that kind of screams or says, hey, you are in a simulation and you have been given these godlike powers over matter, over, I would say, as religion calls it, dominion over the earth,
Yeah.
to either create or destroy as a form of a test.
I mean, I see that you've got a hypothesis there, and I can't negate your hypothesis, but I don't think the evidence really points to it being what's really likely to be true. It really seems that everything that we see around us that is happening can happen without intention, and so that seems to be the best hypothesis that matches the evidence that we see. So once you have that, I don't see why you need to throw in an external intentionality. So
Gotcha.
again, I'm not disproving. Nobody could disprove
Yeah.
God. Nobody can prove God. But
Yeah.
to me, it seems like you were throwing an extra variable into the mix that just does not need to be there.
Or we're taking out a variable that requires it to be there because
No, we're not
of
taking it out. We're not taking it out. I just said it's a hypothesis that remains on the table,
Gotcha.
especially, but it remains on the table in the gaps right now, and those gaps have gotten smaller. Those gaps are what is consciousness and what initiated the Big Bang, and actually, I guess there's a third one there about the process of abiogenesis, how exactly that happened. Those are big gaps still.
Yeah. And then if you were a god, okay, and
Yeah.
you were trying to test people's consciousness of whether they're good or bad, because if you become a god or if you move on to heaven or whatever belief system there is out there, you would want to know that the people around you would do good with the power that you've given them and not bad.
Not necessarily. Why? I mean, if I was a god, we can hypothesize all sorts of variations on that. Being a god, being a creator, doesn't make you a good thing. There's nothing that implies that it has to be immoral. It could be an evil, cruel god. So you seem to have a bias of wanting to. You're being selective on the adjectives of the god that you're talking about here.
Gotcha.
I'm not hearing where I'm not understanding where that's coming from.
Gotcha. I would just use logic in the sense of if there was an evil God, right? I guess you could say that's why there's disease and death and destruction all around the earth. You look at the kids in Palestine and you look at these things. I guess you could say that, maybe God is not a just God and that he would
Or there's no God.
Or it's, yeah, exactly. It could be that there's no God and there's no intervention to prevent. We have a certain amount of goodness in the world and we have a certain amount of evil in the world. Sometimes the good guys win, sometimes the bad guys win. That seems to be what the world looks like. I mean, there does seem to be, unfortunately, too much, I don't know, selfishness at a certain level that perhaps that comes along because of evolution, that we can't seem to get away from the concept of having dictatorial institutions come together. That's a problem.
Yeah. Interesting.
Because they're dictators through history, and there's dictators today that where one person's say affects millions of people's lives and deaths.
Yep.
Putin going into Ukraine, they've lost last count, last I heard, over 900,000 soldiers on their side. That's a detriment to their society.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, those are my questions, and
Good
I appreciate you engaging with me on that.
Keep thinking.
Okay, I might come back to you with more.
Sure. Here,
Thanks,
Monday,
Phil.
Wednesday, Friday. Take care.
Right. Sounds good. Thanks.
Bye-bye. Oh, let's see. What time is it here? 10 o'clock. Avon.
I wanted to say thank you for having me up. I'm sorry if my mic quality is kind of bad. I was trying to use my headset mic, but it's not really cooperating with me tonight.
You're sounding okay. You're sounding okay.
I just had two questions that I love asking basically any atheist or former Christians that I come across. One, do you follow the teachings of Christ himself, not necessarily the Bible, but Christ himself, i.e. the feed the flesh before the soul, give freely upon those who need it, so on and so forth?
In general, I do. I mean, because in general, I am a empathetic person. So, but there's a couple of inconsistencies when he says to take up a sword and follow.
There are
So
there are
some of those
definitely.
so that I don't follow. But his general thing about being kind to the poor and being rich is not the most important thing. Um, those are very empathetic and kind teachings, and I do try to follow that. Yeah,
As basically any competent person with any level of empathy should.
I think so. Yeah,
Second,
I think so.
yeah, second question. Uh, damn, what was? Oh my god, I hate it when this happens. I forgot what the second question was. Damn.
Yeah, I hate losing my train of thought too. It's really frustrating. Happens more as I get older.
Uh,
So,
oh,
Londo, did you have anything to add? While I'll give Avon a second to collect his thought, if he can grab it back.
Um, no, I'm surprised you let that gentleman go on about his use of language towards trans people is all.
Yeah, because I think the sports issue is is a distraction.
No, I mean that, but I guess
It's a side issue. I think
it's his choice of words, like men in women's sports. No, call them trans women. Be respectful. That's to me. To me, when I hear them say men in transports, that's like calling African Americans the N word, in my opinion.
yeah. I guess I just don't agree with you on to that level. I mean,
I
he
guess
was
that's
because they were, for example, we were part of the conversation was um Islamic people in Islamic countries not being able to speak out about or not what was it about people who spoke against their religion once they've left religion shouldn't be allowed to speak. So I'm largely a freedom of speech guy
even
within
if it's
certain limits because I want to minimize discrimination and I want to be in particular an LGBT ally. So I think the sports issue is largely a distraction from what the true issue of trans is, which is it is a natural difference in some people and it should not be discriminated against and nobody should say it's a choice and the people feel offended by what has nothing to do with them. Those are the issues to me that are more important, particularly now
I'm
that
sorry for
we're
cutting
seeing
you
laws
off,
against.
but
Okay, Avon.
I did want to respond to Alex real quick. I did remember what the question was, but I wanted to respond to Alex real quick.
Okay, go for it.
It has been scientifically proven in several studies conducted over the course of, I believe, the past 6, maybe 7 years now, that a trans athlete, male to female or female to male, is going to perform worse than the cisgendered athletes that they are now competing against
Has that
because
been?
their body's having to
Yeah.
readjust to the hormones that they are now putting into their body that it wasn't used to having a surplus of.
Yeah. See, and I also I admitted that I'm not an expert enough on on the subject of trans athletes to really have a strong opinion. I want
I mean,
to be I want to go in the direction of not causing bad feelings about trans people, and
I
especially in an unjustified
and
manner. So
and I
to
guess Phil,
respond,
I get you want to be try to welcome all speech, but I guess there has to be a limit of like, okay, we need to be respectful in the language to try to help these people understand that these are not, there's a reason why these people identify as a different gender. And to say that it's like whatever they're coming up with, I feel like they are being disingenuous of not trying to really seek out the real reason and want to. And I feel maybe it's because, again, I come back to, I feel like Americans are just very selfish and not willing to think of others.
yeah, I mean, there is a portion of the population that certainly is less empathetic and not wanting to learn. And you'll see me pull studies up, right? You've seen me do it before on the trans issue. So I do what little I can. So, but I'm just not up on the sports issue because there are other, I know there are other subtopics around it, like uh, testosterone levels and whatever muscle mass. I don't know.
I guess my concern is when now that it's like been so like put in the spotlight, we have people being accused who are not like the boxer from that country. Was it Algeria, whatever? That how it's not even possible. I mean, she's a woman, but again, it's just like even today we have the orange orangutan, the trans boxer from the country. It's just
Yeah.
now like when we get to this point where like women are being assaulted because they think they're being like they're not really women, like are people going to have to like identify, like take a test? Like it's just really weird. That's the problem, is it's getting out of control where like
It is, and it's going to
and
get
it's
worse before
hurting.
it gets better, unfortunately, with
It's hurting women.
this administration. So
It's hurting women, and the amount of trans people in sports, Phil, are very small. In the NCAA,
yeah,
women, there's 500,000. Trans women, there's 10.
yeah, you're right.
So
It's way out of proportion.
yeah, so that I guess that's the thing, is that I feel like this is not a, oh my gosh, this is a huge thing we have to take care. I don't know, but again,
Avon, was that your second point? Was that your second question that you had?
That was not the second question. That was
So
just
what's your
a response to Alexander's.
so what's yours?
Yeah.
What's your second question? You said you remembered it.
If you could if you could redesign how the human body is using more intelligent design ideals, what would be the first thing that you would change?
oh my gosh.
Back support.
Exactly. Normally get stuff like, oh, how bad the lower back is,
Yeah.
or remove the tailbone because it hurts when I sit down too long, or like my personal favorite, sneezing. It is the most violent thing the human body can do. You could kill yourself, unalive yourself.
Well, I mean,
by
sneezing expels bad things, but yeah, back support is something that it's a side effect of becoming upright, and it is not designed to do that way. It could be designed much better, but that's not how evolution works. It just gets you to good enough, and I don't know what would be strong enough motivation for it to get better in terms of natural influence.
Now, I will be leaving here soon, but I did want to bring up one last thing for you to use later on. The Galapagos Islands.
Mm-hmm.
Just look at the Galapagos finches. How you can have one from right on the shore be completely different than one that was born 20 feet away.
Yeah. What you find though is that creationists use the Galapagos to make the argument that it's okay to have microevolution, but they don't believe in macroevolution. So they'll actually support you on the Galapagos Islands example, but not on the idea that something can be a descendant, that a bird and a lizard could have a common ancestor.
How I've always brought it up is, you agree that, and this is more or less the exact quote that I use basically every time. You agree that we can have these small evolutionary changes, but that is how evolution is. How we have studied, how we understand it today. It is small changes over long periods, thousands of years, hundreds of thousands of years, where this whole thing will change here. Maybe it's the pigmentation on the nose will change, or the eyes will become less resistant to UV light because they're spending more time underground, or they'll lose the ability to see entirely, like in the case of the star-nosed mole.
Yeah. And there's certain cave fish, right, that have essentially useless eyes now. So
because they spend their entire life in the dark.
Yeah.
But
Right.
that was my piece. Thank you for having me up.
Okay.
I'll be heading out now.
All right. I think I'm going to wrap up there then. It's been a good, lively night. Londo, thank you as usual.
You're logging? You're logging for the night?
Yeah, I got some other work to do, so I think I'm just going to go ahead and get to it. So,
You working on the website?
I'm working on my Etsy shop. We're gonna have
Oh,
merch.
that's
We're
cool.
gonna have merch here soon, so we're working on that.
How long is it going to take you?
For the merch, probably about 2 weeks. For the shop itself, probably 6 months to a year.
Oh, for the shop itself?
Yeah, because I mean, to be honest, to run a shop, you need like 500 products. So
Okay.
and basically, I can do like 2 a day, 2 maybe 3. It's a lot of work. It is a ton of work.
So you're gonna basically get a lot of product before you put it up.
Well, it's up. But I want to get the merch for this Believe in Reality logo and stuff before I go start to talk about it. But I think I'm like at 35 items on there right now. I was doing like Mother's Day t-shirts.
Okay.
Today.
But so you have stuff on your shop already?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So what's going to take you 6 months?
Putting up 2 products a day, because honestly, there's so much competition. It's and Etsy. Well, questions about how it's tough to break through competition, so you have to have a pretty big shop to have repeat customers and stuff, and it takes like months just to get your first sale. So it's if you want to check it out, it's called Kindly Ever After.
Kindly with a K?
Yeah, Kindly Ever After, and you'll see there's some atheist stuff on there, some science stuff, and then some real just basic stuff like I say, there's some college stuff, there's some stuff about kindness, obviously, and I was just doing Mother's Day stuff today. So, but I need to do the Believe in Reality logos and get them on mugs and stuff like that too for this group.
So you said Kindly Ever After?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Check it out.
Cool. Awesome.
All right.
All right. Have a good weekend.
Take care.
Hi.
Everybody, it's been a good night. Hopefully, I like the diversity that we had tonight. And I think things stayed kind of smooth. So hopefully this is a good example of keeping up that sort of show. Be kind to each other, kindly ever after. I'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.